We've had our first little bit of sample size here in this NCAA season, and the top five, frankly, look like they belong there. LSU, Texas, UCLA, South Carolina, and Yukon. You go up and down those top parts of the rosters, right? And you're going to see superstars on these rosters. Sarah Strong, AZ Foot, Tanaya Latson, Lauren Betts, Flau'jae Johnson, Madison Booker. I mean, you can keep going, right? That is important. That is necessary. You have to have that top end talent to be a national championship contender, but you also need the people who do some of the dirty work, the people that fill in the margins. Who are the X factors for these five teams that are going to need to step up this season? And maybe they're not the superstar, but they could be equally as important in making a deep run in the postseason. That is what we're here to talk about for the top five teams in the country. We're just going to go in order here from 5 to 1, and that means we're starting off with LSU. Obviously, we kind of know the caveat with any of the non-con or early season LSU conversations. We know you kind of have to put the little asterisk by they're playing the people that they're playing. And we know this has been the LSU conversation. However, Mylasia Fawiley looks fantastic. Off the bench still. Flau'jae Johnson is doing Flau'jae things. Kayla Williams, the same. The biggest question I had, if you watch the SEC previews, if you watch me talk about my SEC preseason media poll, my biggest question about LSU was, what does it look like down low? I'm not worried about the perimeter. They might have the most talented perimeter in the entire nation. I'm not worried about that. It's what's going on down low. And that is where we're looking at for the X factor. Look, Johnson down low, playing the 4. I'm kind of messing with this so far, right? Not Flau'jae. Not Flau'jae, Zakaya. I'm messing with it. Kate Koval is who I'm looking at. Kate Koval is going to have the tough assignment in the SEC. The tough assignment, as you're just bound to see if you go deep into March, true fives. And that is what she's going to be tasked with in this LSU team. So how does Kate Koval handle that is the big question. If you look at the stats so far, only playing 16 and a half minutes per game. You have a couple other young forwards on this roster as well, but Kate Koval is going to be tasked with a lot of that in terms of trying to be that defensive anchor at the rim, trying to stop the opposing bigs. And that is a legitimately big ask. And if LSU is going to overcome the potential lack of depth or talent, or not even talent, more so just seniority, really, in the post that we've grown so accustomed to LSU having with the avatar cycle going from Angel Reese to Nisa Morrow. We just got really spoiled with how good the post play and how seasoned and how proven the post play was at LSU. You don't have that this year. So Kate Koval immediately becomes the X factor just off that alone. So far, again, 16 and a half minutes per game, 11.3 points per game, 9.8 rebounds a game, 1.3 blocks per game. You want to see her get into that double-double range. That would be massive for LSU. And, I mean, you're already almost there playing 16 and a half points per game. So I wouldn't be surprised by any means if we were to see that this season. Look, you wouldn't mind maybe a couple more blocks, right? And just see the rim protection grow. But that is going to be the thing, is the growth of Kate Koval over the course of the season. How does that look? How does that fit in with LSU? How does she run with these incredibly fast-paced players on the perimeter? Look, LSU is going to win games. LSU is going to be very, 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 very good. And Kate Koval, I think, is the difference maker that could take them from very, very good to national champion. Next up, Vic Schaefer's Longhorns. Okay, this is a player I have been talking about since she stepped on the court last season. Look, we got to talk about Jordan Lee. We have to talk about Jordan Lee, who has been off to a pretty good start so far this season and was a player I wanted to see more of last season. We saw what the struggle was for Texas. It was that half-court offense. Obviously, Madison Booker can go and get you a bucket at any moment. That pull-up midi is one of the purest shots in all of college basketball, but the spacing around her was painful. It was brutal at times and made life incredibly difficult for Madison Booker. Obviously, Roy Harmon, a very, very solid point guard, not the best shooter, right? Enter Jordan Lee. And this is what I wanted to see last year, where notably last year, she shot 39% from 3, but only 2 attempts per game, 2.7, round up to 3, right? Only in 19 minutes per game. This year, so far, 5 attempts per game, almost 30 minutes a game. and averaging 15 points. Absolutely. I mean, it's not to oversimplify it, but you just have to find spacing for Madison Booker. And Jordan Lee is that player. You obviously have a player, a top recruit coming in Crump that is going to be very impactful. But if you can get a consistent shooting Jordan Lee that is still 6 foot, that is still willing to play defense, that is exactly what you need next to Madison Booker. An absolutely perfect fit. And again, I wanted to see it more last year. I remember when Texas played here in Norman, I saw her play. I was like, where has this been the entire time? I want to see more Jordan Lee. I'm glad that we're seeing more Jordan Lee. I can't get enough of Jordan Lee next to Madison Booker. I think the fit is perfect. She is the X factor to level up Texas, to level up this offense and keep it a little bit more consistent and keep defenses honest when guarding Madison Booker. Okay, next up is UCLA. And I think in terms of needing an X factor, I think that there is the argument to be made that UCLA is the team that needs one the least. And what I mean by that is I feel like in terms of like team need, like you don't have that as much with UCLA because you have so many players that can kind of fill in the gaps, if you will, because of the ridiculous amount of depth that this team has that I think is probably their best feature on this team. But in terms of trying to turn this team into like an absolute juggernaut that can go and match up potentially with Yukon, to me, I'm looking at Kiki Rice. That is the player that I am looking at that has been dealing with an injury notably and kind of working her way back and everything. And so been playing almost 30 minutes a game. I'm recording this the night just after they beat North Carolina in a game that was honestly close for a decent amount of that before UCLA just kind of outlasted teams, which I think they're going to do a lot this season. But Kiki Rice is a player that you want to see just be able to continue to grow. And again, it's not necessarily filling a need on this team, but there's going to be a time where UCLA is going to have to look to Kiki Rice to score. I think that's going to happen at some point. Like there's going to be kind of nights where it's like, okay, this is your night. How many of those Kiki Rice nights do we get over the course of this season is a question I'm going to be very interested in seeing. And also just like having more growth as a playmaker. Like so far over the course of this season, she's averaging 4.3 assists per game. There's so much talent around, and she's not playing point guard every time down the floor because of the addition of Gianna Niepkins and so on and so. Like, I mean, you have so many guards on this roster that can take the ball up. It's actually ridiculous. But seeing those type of, even doesn't have to be massive growth, right? Just a couple more points per game, a couple more assists per game. Like, and how that shapes up over the course of this season. How often is Kiki Rice relied upon? I don't know the answer to that. But making sure that she is ready to step up every time, to me, that can be the X factor for UCLA. That can be the thing that fills the margin a little bit, where if nobody else can get it going, and there's going to be a lot of options to get going on this UCLA team, can it be Kiki Rice? That is what I'm excited to see. Next up is South Carolina, and this is a new-looking South Carolina team. This is a South Carolina team that's going to get it done in a different way than we've seen some of these past South Carolina teams get it done, it seems like. And to me, I think one of the X factors here, because there's a couple options, but I end up landing on Raven Johnson. And the reason for that is something that we've seen early in this season, and if it can become a trend, can absolutely open things up on the offensive side of the ball for South Carolina, and that is her three-point shooting. If you look at the first game against Grand Canyon, 3 of 5 from 3. Second game, 1 of 2. Against Clemson, when it looked a little shaky at times offensively, generally speaking for South Carolina, they obviously ended up almost winning by 30. So, like, we're not pulling any fire alarms, but 0 for 0. Raven Johnson, we know the wave off. We know we've had this dialogue before. This is nothing new about Raven Johnson and the dialogue surrounding her. But I say that to say, if she can keep defensive honest from 3, I'm not expecting her to go and become some absolute sharpshooter from 3. But if you can punish teams, if you can make it where they can't sag off of Raven Johnson, where this is different this year because you're sagging off and you're letting your defender fall into windows that is now occupied by Tanaya Latson trying to go and score, and you're not passing it inside as much. That's not probably going to be the focus as we get deep into this season for South Carolina, because you have Taniya Latson. You don't have like that true dominant big. Obviously, the injuries down low as well. To me, if Raven Johnson, again, you don't have to become some absolute sharpshooter from three. I'm not asking that, but if you can keep defenses honest, that is going to be such a major factor here, because the playmaking is obviously already there. It was like 11 assists. Yeah, 11 assists already this season. 7 assists in another game. Like, Raven and being involved and being productive. Again, I look at this Clemson stat line: 2 points, 2 assists, 1 of 5. Raven being involved is going to help open things up for Joyce Edwards, for Taniya Latson, so much this year. And again, we saw it in these early couple games where I'm not asking you to go and take 5 threes even. You don't even have to do that. Keep the defense honest, and I think it's going to be massive for South Carolina this year. Last but certainly not least is UConn. UConn. Look, Sarah Strong might be able to just go win the title by herself at this rate. It's absolutely ridiculous. It is. It's insane how good she is. But ultimately, that's not the case. So who is the X factor here for UConn? I think you could even make an argument and say it's Azzi Fudd. Obviously, one of the top and more talented players on this roster, but how does the perimeter scoring look? How does the defense look? There's reasonable questions to ask there. But ultimately, in terms of X factor, there's one player that truly stands out to me, and that is KK Arnold. KK Arnold is such an interesting player to me this year, because we've seen her responsibilities and what has been asked of her to change a lot every single year, right? Obviously, freshman year, UConn couldn't cast a spell from a witch off Etsy to try and stay healthy. I mean, it was brutal. She ended up getting a large responsibility. Then last year, a little bit less, right? Just because you have more bodies coming off the bench and whatnot. So now you enter this starting lineup, you're asked, and you have this responsibility thrusted upon you just naturally from the wave of graduation. And now I think you're ready to step into it a lot better than most players would be, because of those past experience that you already have. But on the court, what am I looking for from KK Arnold that could really amplify the X factorness here? I think the three-point shooting is certainly part of it, and it's similar to Raven Johnson in terms of the spacing and everything. That isn't her game. Like that's not, there was a couple of long twos that could be really changing these stats over here on my right, but in that Louisville game. But ultimately, only really attempts 1-3 a game, doesn't shoot a very high percentage. But I think that there's other pieces here that can really kind of change the way that KK Arnold impacts the game this year in particular. There's a couple of stats here. Again, it's very early on in the season, and so the sample size is not very big. But look at the free throws, right? If you look over the course of her career, freshman year, 67%. Sophomore year, 71%. This year so far, 6 of 7. God, not 6 of 7. Jesus Christ. The kids' games poisoned me. 85% this year. That is a genuine improvement. If she continues to potentially be a cutter, the Sarah Strong, right? Obviously, we know the passer she is. Sarah Williams, a little passer in her own right? I mean, like, if you're cutting and whatnot and getting fouled, you got to make your free throws. And that has been an early improvement we've been able to see so far from KK. I also think another important part here is just defense in general. KK Arnold, a lot of the times, is going to be asked to guard the best perimeter player of the opposing team. Sometimes is she, Gino talked about a little bit about, it could be Azzi as well, just maybe a size thing or different things like that. But KK is going to have those moments where she is going to be guarding the opposing team's best perimeter player. How does that look? How do you do that without fouling? What stats are you able to put up in terms of steals, right? And just general impact that you have. That can be so disruptive, because I am not worried about UConn on offense. And there's not a lot of things to worry about on, like, I mean, it's UConn. They're ridiculously good. But one of the big things is that Paige Beckers was consistently guarding the opposing team's best perimeter player. You don't have that kind of immediate fill-in in a way that you might hope for. And that is where KK Arnold can step in for UConn this season. To win a championship, it's not all about just the star players. You have to have the players surrounding them, filling the gaps, sharpening the margins, and making sure you are able to get over the top. That is what I expect to see from these 5 players, from these 5 contenders. We'll see how it shakes out over the course of the season. That's why you got to stay tapped in here with No Cap Space, because we'll be talking about all the games all the time this season. So make sure you're subscribed here. Share and let me know, who do you think down below in the comments is the X factor on any of these 5 teams, and I'll talk to you soon.